Good morning. You know, what is the most remarkable miracle we all experience is the appearance of the world after we wake up in the morning. Unbelievable, isn't it? 1 minute we're resting in the very comfortable darkness. And at least for me, I become aware that there's an approaching of consciousness. Usually it's felt as coming from below. But I can also imagine it coming towards me from the front. As a kind of pale light that moves ever closer to me. And suddenly, my environment is revealed in all of its physicality, sound, and sights. Even at that point, for a moment, I have no idea who or what I am, because my mind isn't there yet. But when the mind becomes present, suddenly I'm aware all at once of the entirety of my life, my beingness, the world around me. And with that, for many people, comes an instant of feeling depression descending on them, or irritation. Oh, fuck, another day. Just like all the other goddamn days, filled with sound and fury. And I'm forced to participate. That is, at least until I retire. And when I retire, doesn't matter when I get up. I can get up at 6:30, like pretending to still be employed. Or I could sleep till noon or 1 o'clock and feel groggy as hell when I get up. But something magic happens. Here I was in the vastness of sleep, unaware of my mind, unaware of the world. And suddenly, consciousness comes to me, unbidden. I didn't choose it to come because I wasn't present enough to choose to come. Unless I'm 5 years old and it's Christmas Day. I will myself to be awake early to catch Santa and to get up and open presents. But the older I've gotten, the more I enjoy the experience of sleep. And I begin to realize that the waking state, consciousness, is a special state. That the absence of consciousness is more or less the larger true state of all sentient beings. And that consciousness is like a gentle touch that comes here and there to all sentient beings in different forms, whether I'm a fly or a mosquito, a frog, bird, monkey, human, cow. I experience the world differently. And I may or may not have a mind. I have no idea. But I know now, as a human waking up, I have a mind, and it's the one that, at a certain point in the awakening process, reveals to me my knowledge of the world. When I first wake up, I'm not really aware of my life, what I am, who I am. I'm just aware of the rising of consciousness in me. In that peaceful sleep awareness, so to speak. Because I can remember what it's like to be totally asleep. I get to experience that every morning, coming out of sleep, and every evening going to sleep. I know what the sleep state is like. And if I work at it, I can remember it as being all around me, just like it is when I'm asleep at night. It's like it pervades the background of my waking consciousness. Now let's take a look at this. When I'm waking, at first, I see with a visual sense, an internal visual sense, the rising of consciousness in me as something that arises out of my gut or my chest. And flows upwards into my brain. Although I'm not aware often of the flow, in retrospect, that's how I can talk about it. It's a metaphor for the waking experience. And then I'm aware that I'm still in near sleep in an environment where there are sounds around me. There's light. There's sensations of my body in the bed. But it's still at that point, my mind hasn't named anything. So I'm just in a waking consciousness state of mind. And the mind has not yet been awakened. But then the mind starts functioning. I don't know, maybe a second or 2 seconds, maybe 3 after I first become conscious of being somewhere in some time. But until that knowledge of who and what I am flows into me as part of the waking process, I have no idea who I am or where I am. But the knowledge comes. I'm Eric. I'm Chris. I'm Ed. I'm not Mark. I'm not Vesselina. I'm not Jay. And you become alive as yourself, as a person, wherever you are, whether it's Phoenix or New York or Cleveland or Bulgaria or France. And your day begins. Now, it used to be after my day begins, I really waited for the weekends when I didn't have to do anything, had nothing scheduled. And I just laid in bed and played with my consciousness, watching my consciousness flowing, how it moves, recognizing that there is an external world in consciousness vis-a-vis me as a body. And maybe somewhere along the line, over the months or years, I get to understand that consciousness is a special state. And it's only in consciousness that there's a me and a thou world. It's like my consciousness gives me knowledge that I exist and knowledge of the external world and my situation. I've awakened to knowledge, understanding. Sometimes in difficult times in my life, I didn't enjoy what happens after I wake up, finding myself in the same awful situation that I had been in the night before and the day before that and the day before that. Maybe I have a crappy job, or I'm in danger of losing that crappy job. Maybe I'm in a crappy relationship. Or maybe I'm in crappy health. And I just don't enjoy what happens after I wake. But I used to, on the days when I was not working, and didn't have something bugging me to get done and get awake and get it happening. I just used to love laying there and exploring my consciousness. And eventually we get to see or understand maybe the world isn't real. Maybe it's an artifact of my consciousness. That the fundamental thing is not the world and me and the world, but the fundamental thing is awakened consciousness. Awakened consciousness reveals me as a body and a mind separate from the environment. And in some ways, this is a shitty place to be. Because here I'm a little bit of consciousness in a vast ocean of nothingness, which I visit every evening and night when waking consciousness leaves me. Now, during the day, I can fear nothingness, especially the nothingness of death, as the absence of me permanently. But on the other hand, I hardly ever fear sleep. I enjoy sleep. I prepare to go to sleep. I watch some boring movie on television until I start feeling very tired. And I say, time to go to bed. Get rid of this boring TV show in order to open myself to the existence of a non-waking consciousness, the sleep consciousness, which is dark, very relaxed, very comfortable, sweet sleep. So, isn't it in a sense that sleep consciousness is a desirable state? And what's the essence of sleep consciousness? Is it just the absence of waking consciousness? Or is it the awareness of sleep consciousness with its vast depth, with the extreme comfort of not feeling our bodies anymore? I don't feel the tension in my neck or my back or whatever else ill I might feel. If I have some pain and I go to sleep, I don't feel the pain anymore. So it's a nice place to go to for vacation every night for 6 hours or 12 hours. Garima has a very rich sleep night. She can go to bed at 2 and not get up until 1 o'clock the next day. Her waking consciousness time is short compared with mine. But I don't call her lazy for that. It's just that she enjoys sleep consciousness more than I do, I guess. What about you? What are your thoughts? You don't have to answer this. This is rhetorical. What are your thoughts on which consciousness you prefer more? And which consciousness is more real to you? Is it the waking consciousness where all the nectar and all the shit happened to you with its very complicated world and the immense differences in the experience from moment to moment? Or is it in the absence of the waking world? And something may dawn on us about this point. You know, I don't know whether the world really exists or not, or if it's just a artifact of waking consciousness. And in this waking dream, all this external world is there, but is it real? To me, it seems the absence of waking consciousness is more fundamental than the arising of waking consciousness on a daily basis. When we awaken, after the initial intervals of no thought, when the mind goes on and we're aware of ourselves in an immense external world, and begin a day full of activities, and maybe if you're adventurous, you climb Mount Everest or go walking through the jungles of Borneo, or you go to work in an office building downtown. Whatever your life is like, it all occurs in waking consciousness. And I guess most of us feel that's real and have no thought about sleeping consciousness and the reality of sleep consciousness. But we understand that consciousness is more fundamental than our awareness of being a body and a mind in a larger world of waking consciousness. You might say this is a special state, even though it happens every day and takes up most of the a great number of hours of the day. That doesn't mean that the visions and phenomena we see during the daytime are sufficient to prove there's an existence of an external world that's like the experiences we have during waking consciousness. We may begin to doubt the reality of the external world because somebody like Ramana, Robert Adams, or Nisargadatta come around and say the external world doesn't exist. It's our consciousness that exists and comes to us in the darkness of night to reveal the waking dream. And they urge us to respond to our experiences in the waking world like we would if we were in a dream and simultaneously we're aware that we're in a dream. Then nightmares and good dreams wouldn't be so remarkable. They'd only be dreams. So Robert says, ignore the external world and all the activities you engage in the external world. And instead investigate your own consciousness, how it arises, how it sets, how you use it to explore all the situations that arise in daily life, in the waking state and the sleep state. Be not so aware of the external world, but be aware of your reactions internally to the external world. And then thereby begin to loosen yourself from the bondage of existence in the external world. That's what enlightened spirituality is about. Freeing yourself from the trials and tribulations of an external world. Sure, it exists when you're awake, but you don't have to take it that seriously. Take it as a provisional world. It may be real, may not be real. But realize when you go to sleep, you may enter another world of dreams as real as it seems when you're awake. But it's a dream. It happens when our bodies are asleep and we're not aware of the external world. But sometimes we can have very unusual occurrences when we're aware of the sleeping world and dreams, and at the same time have a kind of awareness of the external world that's around us while we're sleeping. And these can coexist for a few minutes. Might call it a lucid dream. What does that teach us? It only teaches us is that not only is there waking consciousness, but there's a sleep consciousness that's always with us, except that waking consciousness crowds it out. So now we're really getting advanced in our investigations. We're seeing that spirituality is all about understanding, knowledge of the nature of our consciousness. We explore our consciousness instead of exploring the world. We watch consciousness coming and going in the morning and in the evening. We watch consciousness during the day by not paying that much attention to the objects, but pay attention to the fact that we're body-mind experiencing an apparent external world. Now, what of this equation is real? Is it me as a separate entity? Or is it me as dreaming? A waking world is around me. Which is the dream, which is truth, you might say. What's awake mind? And is awake mind truth? Or is it the waking dream and has no truth? So, recently I've been getting some letters from some students about exactly this process of watching consciousness when going to sleep or waking up. And I'll tell you, it's a good mark of advancement when you can watch the process of waking up and the flowering of waking consciousness in the morning. And even harder is watching the approach of sleep. Because if you watch too intently, the watching itself prevents it from happening. Because going to sleep requires a loosening of the will, the loosening of self-directed activity, in letting it all go, like death. And when you let it all go, waking consciousness moves out of the brain and settles into the body. And then we're in deep sleep, to which a dream may come. Now, I can't tell you that I'm aware of the time of the beginning of the dream and the end of the dream, because it doesn't seem as sharp as observation of the arrival of waking consciousness with its various stages of coming and going from the brain, and therefore from my awareness or knowing. So knowing in the dream state has a different quality, except once in a while, I remember being in the dream state and trying to wake up from the dream state into waking consciousness, because what was happening in my dreams was scary as hell. And I wanted to get away, to wake up, and I knew I was asleep, and I tried like hell to wake up. So the scary dream and the reality of this apparent reality of the dream no longer scared me. I guess most of you have experienced this in your life, being in a dream and wanting to get the hell out. Thus, dreams of flying and of running, and even more attempts to wake yourself up when you're asleep. Have you ever tried waking yourself up when you're asleep, knowing you're asleep and thinking, I want to wake up? I'm sure you have. But let's take a look at this. What this is all about is consciousness and the states of consciousness. When we're asleep, there's no external world. There's nothing. And if we try to remember during the daytime what sleep was like, we get an idea of it. It's darkness, it's quietness, it's total rest. And we can feel it throughout our body and around us. We can feel sleep as being there, just on the other side of the divide of whatever it is. And we behold that sleep state. And there's not anything like distance or time in the sleep state. There's no separation. There's no measurable observation of anything that has dimensions or temporal extensions. You can't take a tape measure and measure size in a dream. Guess you could, but it'd be an imaginary tape measure. So we look at ourselves and we say, I have this sleep consciousness, which I can explore. And I realize that when I go very deep into it, I disappear totally. And I'm not really aware of anything. It's at a point where there's a mixing of the two consciousnesses, that I'm aware of what sleep is like, as a place to rest for a night. And I'm aware also of waking consciousness and the mysterious appearance of my body and the world in this waking consciousness. But does that mean that what I see and hear, taste and feel in the waking state is real? Don't you see? It's just phenomenon, like phenomena in the dream state. But we don't consider that real because it's temporary. And we consider the world in waking consciousness as being real because every morning we awaken to something that's similar. Now, if we took a lot of drugs, the waking world wouldn't seem so real. It'd seem just as variable as our dreams. So people on certain kinds of drugs, hallucinogens, really are attempting to explore consciousness. And the altered consciousness is produced by drugs because it makes them feel happy to be explorers of something entirely unusual. And they may even consider themselves superior to ordinary people that lead the same life from day to day in their same old pedantic world. They may say, I'm an explorer of the infinite, or some other such bullshit, making themselves special narcissism for being an explorer of some special states of mind. But we ordinary schmucks seem to be satisfied with recognizing the reality of the waking world and the peace and quiet of the sleep world. And we live quite contented, going from one to the other without questioning the whole process, without questioning consciousness, without becoming more aware of consciousness itself, rather than the objects in our waking consciousness. Exploring objects in our waking consciousness is considered the usual way of human life, adapting to the world around us and adapting the world around us to better suit what makes us feel comfortable and happy. We screw around with the apparent external world. But some question, like Robert, like Ramana, is that world real? Or is it a waking dream? And after a while of asking ourselves that question and exploring consciousness and the vagaries of consciousness and the temporality of our consciousness, we may come to the conclusion, I really don't know. I really don't know whether consciousness is real. I really don't know whether the waking world exists or not. I know that when I'm awake, it doesn't appear I have a lot of control over that external world. I can stay in bed all day and not move and drift back and forth between sleep and the waking world, but it doesn't give me much control over the waking world. And then there are some people that break off from the waking world. And the world they live in is imaginary. And we can call them insane because when they talk to us, they don't make sense. I used to enjoy working when I was a psychotherapist with people that other people thought were pretty wacky. They spoke to God. They knew that other worlds existed that most people didn't see. They could see other entities in the room when other people couldn't see them. Maybe they saw a tiger in the corner that I couldn't see. But I was interested in hearing about what their world was like and how they felt about it. How do you feel about your world? Are you happy in your waking world? Are you more happy in your sleep world? How do you feel the happiness? Where do you feel the happiness? Now, me, when I felt happy, it's like I felt very light of body and of mind. And there was nothing prodding me or weighing heavy on me. It was light as a song. My world was light as a song. And I can be that way in dreams also, but usually they're more energetic with more stuff happening. But I realize now it's all about consciousness. It's not about the world. It's not about sleep consciousness. It's about consciousness itself. Everything happens in consciousness. And nobody pays any attention to consciousness itself. They pay attention to the worlds within consciousness, whether it's a dream at night in sleep or the world they live in when they're awake. But what about that which experiences consciousness? Do we know that entity, that person? Can we ever know them? Well, yes, you can. You've always known them. They're you. It might be hard to locate this you because it doesn't have any place it is. It's not located in your brain or in your heart. As you're the witness of the whole thing. So in a sense, you're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. That you is that to which consciousness comes. That me was the one that was aware of the coming of Eddie here. And it was also aware of the coming of waking consciousness and aware of the coming of sleep consciousness. But who or what is it that becomes aware? This thing, this entity, this state, whatever it is, exists prior to consciousness, exists during consciousness, although we're not aware of it because we're aware of being in the world as a body. And it's also there when we're dreaming. I call it me. That's a shortened form of a long, long explanation about sleep states, waking states, neurological processes, and all that. I'm just aware there's constantly an observer of the whole caboodle. I guess the phrase is shit and caboodle. Hi, Eddie. Eddie just walked in front of the screen and all you guys disappeared. And all I was aware of was Eddie and me observing Eddie. Are you aware of yourself as the observer? Or are you comfortably sequestered inside of a personality? A Chris, or a Cassie, or an Eddie, or a Mark. Mark's mind is always functioning. I can see him now. I can see the thought waves going through his brain and lighting up his smile. Eric's decided to take the way out of total relaxation and just listening and not opposing anything or even accepting anything, just being. But watch yourself, be aware of yourself, and begin to be aware of consciousness itself rather than the external world or your body. Be aware of the coming and going of consciousness. Be aware of what being aware is like and what you're aware of. And question it. Is this room around me real? Or is it something I'm dreaming? And if that, what is it that's dreaming? I guess you could even do that in sleep if you're having a dream. Wonder if this dream is real or it's a special state of awakened dream world. So now you begin to explore things, not things in the world. You don't run off to the Himalayas to find a guru or tune on Zoom to talk to a different guru. And definitely you don't read books written by gurus because they'll just confuse the hell out of you because each one has a different point of view, a different path, a different teacher, different psychology, different everything. And it's hard to get two books to agree with each other about anything. Even the same person writing over 30 or 40 years, the books written when he or she was 30 are nowhere near what he writes when he's 70. So the world has changed, or he has changed, or she has changed, or everything has changed. And when everything is changing and only appears real for a short period of time, what's really real? So you begin to see that the mind can do everything. It changes everything. It changes from minute to minute. You can go from being a miserable personality to total rest in 15 minutes after you fall asleep. And you wake up the next morning, you're a miserable crud again. Until over a period of time, you see that all this changes. Everything's always changing. If you don't like what's happening now, just wait 15 minutes. If you like what's happening now, don't try to hold on to it because it'll slip through your fingers. The only thing we know for sure is changeability. That which appears to be solid and external, like a tree or a house, won't be there in a few decades or a few centuries. It'll be something completely different. All that we ever know is our consciousness and sleep consciousness. And all the special states that we enjoy are variations on waking consciousness. All the different highs that we go through when we take drugs are variability in waking consciousness. I know a person who went to South America, to Peru or somewhere, to take I don't know, some kind of medication that makes you high, and they specialize in it, the shamans or whatever they call, and they guide you through these states. And she told me she's never been more scared in her life as the sound she heard outside of her hut in the middle of a jungle. I probably would be too. But We don't have a jungle around us. Here in Arizona, we have a huge sand pit all around us, hundreds of miles wide. If I were in New York, it's different. It's a jungle out there. Ha ha ha. Just for you, Jay. Well, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want any answers? I can throw answers at you. Here's one. 5. Here's another one. It's cool in this room. Thanks for asking. Here's another one. You're awake in that satsang. Do you like it or not? Any other questions? I'm open for questions. Robert used to call this period in satsang stump the guru. Do you have any stumpers to ask me? And after he gave an answer to somebody's question, and somebody always asked a question, he'd say, that's not a stumper.
I was wondering if we choose our incarnation. In reading Robert Adams, I think he basically said that karma wouldn't work if we didn't choose our incarnation, and until we become self-realized or aware, we just keep coming back. So I don't know if that's a stumper, but it stumped me a little.
What's the question?
Do we choose our incarnation?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm down with that.
Because I remember when I was a kid, when consciousness first arose, I hadn't the slightest idea about anything. It only was after I grew up and I took philosophy classes that these kinds of questions even came up. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? What's real? What's not real? Let alone, how can I be beyond life and death and choose a particular path in the world? Because I don't remember doing that choice. Of course, I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so that's not much of an admission. But I don't know.
But I think the basic question then is who chooses? And at least in the context of pure Advaita, with nobody was ever born, nobody ever died, going back to that thing about is it an illusion? Maybe it's just the not stump the guru, but stump me, just put it down. Just put it, what does it mean? I mean, maybe it's, I think I keep coming back to Robert with, I am not the body, I am not the doer, I am not the mind. And if I don't go there, then I start to think I'm the architect of something, which I'm not. And then I just get bogged down in it. And then it becomes a spiral, like a kind of a vicious cycle. And
I got an answer for you, Jay.
What's that?
Stop thinking.
That's been your answer since day one. Yes.
Get a subscription to Marvel Comics.
The erudition there is probably absolutely priceless. It should be required reading now. Not the Times, not the Post, not whatever. Yeah, thank you.
Richard, you're new here. Do you have a question?
I don't. David Kennedy recommended you.
Who?
David Kennedy?
Okay. What did he say? Anything interesting?
Well, he really thought you were worthwhile to be listened to be in the influence of. That was very, you were very accepting in the satsang.
I'm going to have to take him off of my Rolodex.
Yeah.
Can't trust the guy. I don't have a Rolodex, so I'll just forget him like I forgot what I had for lunch yesterday. And I forgot everything else too. That's one of the happy tidings that comes with getting old, is the memory goes. And when the memory goes, I don't have any problems because I don't remember them. Other people have to do that for me and say, hey, have you done this? Oh, no. Then they'd say, I thought you said you were going to do this. And I said, I can't remember that. I make no promises.
Sounds like our relationship, Ed.
Vesselina, are you still here? Do you have a question? There we
No,
go.
no, I don't have a question.
Did you fall asleep?
Uh, Sort of.
You don't have a question, or you do have a question?
Well, no, I don't have a question. I try to keep quiet because my mind is thinking all the time.
Okay. Rekha, ask a question. I see you asking, but I can't hear anything. Your mic is not alive. No.
You're on mute, Rekha.
So I don't have the question. When you speak, I really don't know where I am. So it's not the right time to ask me something.
Well, good. I don't know where I am either.
I really don't know from where you are speaking, but it's so strong, and I couldn't sit now. That's why I turned off the camera. I had to lay down. So
What country
now
are you in?
now I am Sweden at the time.
Sweden?
Yes, just for 10 days. Yes,
Where will you be after that 10 days?
in Hungary.
Okay.
Hungary. Yes.
Do you pay attention to the war in Ukraine?
Yes, for sure.
Do you see many immigrants from Ukraine in Hungary now? How does it make
Not
you feel?
painful. What to say?
Yes. It's awful. It's really awful. Can't imagine in this time one European nation attacking and trying to
Yes,
take over or destroy another country. It hasn't happened since World War II. Not in Europe, other places. And it's just unthinkable that 80 years after the end of the Second World War, we've got this going on. Who would have expected it out of Russia? Who would? I guess most of Europe, that's why they all joined NATO. Okay, everybody, relax now. Go back to unknowing. And I'll go back to unknowing too. And I love you all. I love you so much. You're my family, as uninformed and ignorant as you appear to be, increasingly so as you come here. Pretty soon, we'll all be dumb fucks, completely happy knowing nothing.
I can't. I have to unmute the laughter. That's perfect, priceless. I love you.
Take care, everybody. I
I
love you.
love you. I love you. Take care.